I've just finished reading Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, Total Recall. Now, I totally recommend it. It's one of the best books. I never thought I would say this, but it's one of the best books that I've read, like, by miles. Now, I like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I like his movies, you know, I'm not really into politics, so I wasn't really into the whole Governator thing or anything like that. You know, like Terminator, you know, his films he's done with James Cameron, Terminator, Terminator 2, True Lies, Conan, all these films. You know, I'm a guy, I like action movies. But it would never struck me as a guy that I would be like totally inspired by. But I'm telling you, this book blew me away. It was absolutely phenomenal. It's just amazing that the media, they always show you like a certain side to somebody, but they don't show you their full story. That's why I think it's important to read biographies, to realize it's like people aren't just there because he's not just Arnold Schwarzenegger because he's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He actually came from humble backgrounds like everybody else did, you know. Back in Austria, him, his brother and his mum and dad. And the fact that he had a certain expectation, his parents had a certain expectation for him, his family had a certain expectation for him, but he had a different expectation for himself. And it amazes me that the fact that he knew what he wanted, he wasn't afraid to go for it, and he went for it. And not only that, he actually found mentors and modeled himself off people who were already successful. So, which is very smart. A lot of people think they know it all, but I think in a lot of the situations in the book, he had a lot of naivety, especially when he came to America, about the culture. He talks about little things like when he was dating, I think, his wife Maria, or I don't know if it was when he was dating his wife, how they send thank you letters when they go to each other's homes, and they go to dinner parties, but they don't do that in Europe. Or when another fact about him that a lot of people don't know maybe is the fact that he got wealthy in real estate, in property investing, before he was big in movies, and that gave him the freedom to pursue his movie career. Now, again, his naivety, he would say one of the things he would say to people, other actors, I say naivety, but I think it's just it's a simple question. It's like they were taking roles that they didn't really want to take, or they were struggling doing the whole waiter thing and complaining that they couldn't get jobs and things like that. And he was in the same position. Like, he turned down a lot of roles where he was like seen as a meathead or this and that. And he would say to them, like, why'd you do it then? And they're like, oh, I need to pay my bills, I need to pay for my apartment, all this stuff. But he didn't need to worry about that because he had already invested in property. And again, he found a mentor. He knew how to win friends and influence people. He made friends with a lady who was, she was a foreigner as well. I can't remember what country she was from, but she knew a lot about property. She helped him source properties and invest in properties, and they partnered together. And a lot of people saw that relationship and thought, why is he friends with this woman? You know, people are always looking at what they can get out of people. But at the same time, he wanted to build on a relationship with another human being. That's what he said. And it paid off dividends anyway, because she ended up being his mentor in property. And again, that gave him the freedom to pursue his movie career. Again, a lot of people don't realize that you need to be financially smart, and that's one thing that he really is. I didn't know, you know, I knew he was a motivating guy and all this, but I didn't realize how financially smart he was. You know, he knew about when he was making his movies, like Conan, when he made his first major movie. I know he starred in Hercules, and he did the bodybuilding program. He was the one who pushed the studio to market the film in more countries than it was. Initially, they were going to market in, I think it was Spain and Italy. I think those were the two countries that he mentioned. And he for like 4 days, and he was like, well, why don't we spend a day in Italy, a day in Spain, a day in France, a day in England, a day in, and spent 7 days touring 7 different countries. You know, he was prepared to do that, where he says a lot of actors, you know, they snobbed at that, thinking, oh, I'm an artiste, you know, I focus only on the acting. But he understood the business side, and that helped him a lot in his career. You know, even through when he got his role in Twins, him and Danny DeVito, because he was an action star, but at that point, and he hadn't done comedy. He wanted to veer off into comedy. And another thing with that, he went and found mentors, comedy mentors. Spent time with them, learned about comedy. Again, there was a clash of cultures, because obviously American comedy is different from the comedy he might be used to in Austria. Obviously, not speak English not being his first language, and that as well. But regarding that movie Twins, he made a deal with the studio where he said, "Look, don't we're not going to take a salary. This is why it's important not to work for money. To work for value. For building value for your career." He said, "I'm not gonna take a salary. Me, Danny DeVito, we're not gonna take a salary. What we're gonna do, we're gonna take points in the movie off the back end, they call it, and from that." Because they just knew, they were confident that Twins was going to be a hit. Studio wanted to pay them, but they were like, no, we'll take the risk with you. And the film ended up doing very well. I can't remember the numbers, what it grossed, but he made a lot of money from the film, over 10 million. I think he was going to get paid that amount at the time. But yeah, he continues to get paid from that movie today, and other movies. That's the power of residual income. You do something once and get paid over and over. He understood all these principles. He understood marketing. He was very smart in that sense. But it was just amazing the way the book kind of goes from his start in Austria, the fact that he was drafted, he went to the army, but he knew he wanted to be a bodybuilder. I think that was just part of the culture to go into the Austrian army. He didn't really want to be there, but and he got himself in trouble, and then they let him go because he mentioned the fact that he wanted to do the bodybuilding thing, and also he'd caused a lot of problems in terms of his troublemaking in the army, like drove a tank, he crashed the tank, something like that. I can't remember the exact details, but from there, he went into bodybuilding, and he decided he wanted to be Mr. Olympia. He didn't decide, I just want to be Mr. Austria or Mr. Europe. He wanted to be Mr. Olympia. And then he had a trip to London that he went to become Mr. Olympia. And he did it against all odds. He had his mentor, is it Reg Park, I think his name is? I might be getting the name wrong, but I'm not as educated on the bodybuilding scene, even though I like fitness. But he found a mentor there, and he modelled off his mentor. He had pictures of bodybuilders in his room, even his mum was worried and thinking, why you got all these pictures of half-naked men in your room? But at the same time, then she realised, actually, this is what he was envisioning for himself, and he did it, and through that, he came to America, and he wanted to get into movies. He wanted to be the highest paid movie star of all time or in the world, and he did it. When he's talking about James Cameron for Terminator, initially he was supposed to play the role of Kyle Reese. He didn't want to play the Terminator, but he was fascinated with that character. So James Cameron was like, why didn't you play the Terminator? Because he knew so much about how the characters should be. He's talked about his experience on Conan, how he got training, martial arts training, weapons training, how the Terminator should behave. He should be, if whoever's playing the Terminator needs to be emotionless, and it's a machine reacting, so it needs to just reload its gun. It's not good, it's not evil. He had a lot of passion for the character, but he was very reluctant to play the role when Cameron suggested it. And originally O.J. Simpson, I didn't know this, O.J. Simpson was supposed to be the Terminator. But it was amazing that, again, Cameron's charisma and understanding of people, again, he told him, because he thought, it's going to be, he doesn't want to play this macho, evil character. He wanted to be like the heroic character. But Cameron was like, we can make the Terminator heroic, He said, even like, how do you make that character who goes into a police station and kills a bunch of police heroic? You know, how do you make a machine, a cold, ruthless machine, heroic? But he said there's certain ways that they shot it, the way that the police were a bit cocky. You could see it in the film. They're a bit cocky, a bit arrogant. So the audience are thinking, God, they don't have a clue, you know. And you see those subtleties in it, the way that it was done. Even from the line "I'll be back," he initially wanted it to be "I will be back." Arnold wanted that. He wanted to change the line, but Cameron was like, "No, trust me, that's the line to use. I'm the writer. I know what I'm talking about." But he was really. He said that was the one thing they really argued about, and they didn't know this line was going to be the classic line or anything like that. But Cameron was very adamant. Just use the lines that I tell you to use because I'm the writer. I don't tell you how to act. You know, just do what I'm saying. And he obviously went along with what Cameron said because he realised James Cameron was very like ahead of his time. It was only his second film, but he has such in-depth knowledge of science, in-depth knowledge of filmmaking. His relationship with James Cameron was very interesting. The studio, they didn't really listen to him in terms of marketing. They made a few mistakes. The film still did very well, but you know, if they had listened to James Cameron, it would have done better. And you can see that from the results of his films now. You see how Avatar and Titanic are now the highest grossing movies of all time. There's a reason for that. This guy has a lot of experience, and Arnold respected that, which is why he listened to him in terms of the line, "I'll be back," and even though he didn't want it to be "I'll be back" at the time. Again, they didn't know that line would be like the line, but through feedback afterwards when the film was released, you know, people were like, "Oh, say the line, say the line." He's like, "What line?" He goes, "Oh, I'll be back." So it's kind of ironic that that was the one thing that he argued about, which Cameron was right about. But just in general, all the way through to his relationship with his family, he goes into the mistakes he made, obviously, with his family, his mom, his brother, and his dad. Like his dad, I don't think their relationship was necessarily as close. He was brought up in the army and other things like that, and he had a different, different values to Arnold, but his brother was different as well. Unfortunately, they both died. He didn't even get to attend their funeral. But he learned his lessons from that, and he became closer to his mom. She was upset he had left Austria and everything else, even though he knew he had to do it for his own ambitions. But you know, it's like with these people, I think people always look at the fallacies. Like there is always, everybody has flaws. We're all human. We all have flaws. And people if you mention, "Oh, read Arnold Schwarzenegger's book," first thing you think, "Oh, he's the guy who had the scandal with the nanny," which he talks about in the book. And he admits obviously the things he did wrong. You know, he's a human being. You know, it wasn't a good thing, but people like to zero in on that. You know, rather than look at what can I learn from this person's success, how they've lived their life. And this is a man that he got everything that he wanted, not because he was lucky, not because he was born in the right country or the right environment or any of that nonsense. It's because he went for it. He took action. He said, "This is what I'm going to do," and he did it. He found the environments in which he needed to be in. When it was bodybuilding, he surrounded himself with the right people. When it was filmmaking, again, surrounded himself with the right people, learnt the craft, he learnt acting. You know, he wasn't very good at English, he had an English teacher. He learnt English. You know, he would, even he talks about how James Earl Jones on Conan was his mentor. You know, he would ask him questions about how to deliver a line and everything else, and he would take time and educate Arnold about acting while they were working on Conan. So he found mentors within that realm of filmmaking, and he always saw himself as a businessman. He wasn't just an actor. He would focus on the marketing. He would focus on the finances. He would understand when he was talking to studio execs. He had an understanding with them. I mean, he had fallouts with certain producers. Producer of Conan, I think he fell out with because he made a mistake in when they were having a meeting, the way he talked to him was a bit naive. But again, he learned from that mistake. So it's important to know how to build relationships as well. When he wanted to know comedy, he hung around with comedians. He learnt from them, you know, and he had the comedy elements to his film. I mean, one of the things I like about watching these films is cheesy one-liners. It's so funny. It just cracks me up. I like that kind of cheesy stuff. But you know, he learnt that from comedians. You know, him spending time with comedians, you know, learning about timing and how to deliver a line and the emotion that it evokes from the audience. So that was a real eye-opener. In terms of politics, I think that was the thing he was really passionate about more than anything, which is why he went into politics. I mean, even though his wife, you know, Maria Shriver, she came from the Kennedy family, obviously a political family. She didn't want him to get into politics because of she'd been brought up in politics and it caused some sort of traumas for her. But at the end of the day, she just ended up supporting him because it was what he wanted to do. It's what they call Eulerian destiny. It's what he really wanted to do. That part of the book didn't interest me as much because I'm not as interested in politics, but I did still get some things from that. I mean, the fact that you realise how difficult it is to be in that kind of position, that public position where you need to take care of so many things and it's almost impossible to do that. And he explains it in a lot of depth. It actually makes you empathetic for somebody in that situation. They don't have all the power that the media perceives. You know, it makes you feel as if Obama and all these people have so much power, but they don't. They can only... They're a human being doing a job, and they can only do as much as, you know, a human being possibly can. You know, their intentions might be good, but they might have to make hard decisions. I mean, he was talking about how obviously it was at the time where before the financial crisis, when he was in power, and a lot of things were happening in California. They had to make a lot of cuts. Because of a lot of things that have been done in the past that obviously you have to be accountable for at some point. And there's nothing that you can do about it as a politician necessarily. You just have to make these hard decisions. And it's not just you, there's a multitude of councillors that have to make decisions and who are expertise in different things, you know. But I like the fact that, you know, he was striving for health care and fitness, and he was encouraging kids to lift weights and to train, and he would help kids from disabled backgrounds do that kind of thing. So that was good. I mean, but again, he shows his flaws. He shows like his flaws in his relationships with his family. Even though he had a happy family and everything else, he talks about, you know, like I said, obviously the nanny situation. He talks about now obviously him and his wife are separated because of that, and he talks about, you know, how hard it was on the kids. Obviously his relationship with his mom, how it improved before she died and everything else, and he was happy with that. But obviously his brother and his father, they didn't have as close of a relationship. So there was flaws in the man. He's just like anybody else. And he gives his rules of kind of his kind of advice for success at the end of the book, which is really good. But overall, like I said, one of the best books I've ever read. I highly recommend it. Arnold Schwarzegger, Total Recall. I give it 5 stars out of 5. Just buy the book. You won't be disappointed. So if you like this video, like, share and subscribe. Leave post a comment down below. Let me know what you think of Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, Total Recall. Have you read it? If not, you're going to give it a go. What did you like from the book, if you did? Whether you like him or not, I'd be interested to know what you think of his story. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you on this channel for some more videos.